Okay, so we have, here's outcome 8.3, which we skipped this, and 8.4, I didn't make you do those. 8.5, we did 4, 5, and 6, so we should be starting here for 8.5. Progressing from the outward layer to the inward layer, the correct sequence of meningeal layers, these protective layers around the brain and spinal cord. They're only in the central nervous system. That's going to be C. Epidural meaning outside the dura mater, arachnoid underneath the arachnoid, the subarachnoid space, and then pia mater. Number 5 is going to be B, when cerebrospinal fluid is drawn during a spinal tap, a needle is inserted into the subarachnoid space. Number 6 is going to be B as well. The epidural space between the dura mater of the spinal cord and the walls of the vertebral canal contains loose connective tissue, blood vessels, and adipose tissue. And then we did 8.6. 8.6, talking about gray matter and white matter of the spinal cord. This was our last success criteria that we had. I wanted you to be familiar with gray matter and white matter and the spinal cord as well. So we'll talk about the spinal cord, and the next thing we'll do tomorrow after your quiz, which is just 8.1 and 8.2. So we're going to be going to the brain, which means we should be starting brain dissection the end of this week. So outcome 8.6, number 1. So outcome 8.6, number 1 is going to be D. The spinal cord serves as the major passageway for sensory impulses to the brain. Sensory means information coming in, right? And motor impulses from the brain. Those are the messages going out, or the motor pathway. Number 2 is going to be C. In the spinal cord, cerebrospinal fluid is found within the central canal and subarachnoid space. Number 3 is also C. The white matter of the spinal cord contains large numbers of myelinated and unmyelinated axons. So that's an important part of what I wanted you to understand. White matter is going to be the axons. All right. And number 4 is going to be B, the area of the spinal cord that surrounds the central canal and is dominated by the cell bodies. And that's important as well. Cell bodies being the gray matter. Okay, and number 5 is going to be A. The posterior gray horns of the spinal cord contain somatic and visceral sensory. Okay, so posterior means the back part, right? So that means the messages coming into the spinal cord are coming into the back portion of the spinal cord. And number 6, next page, that's going to be D. The axons in the white matter of the spinal cord that carry sensory information up toward the brain are organized into ascending tracks. Ascending means up, so when messages come into the spinal cord, and then here's the brain, you guys know that I'm a really good artist, but then they're going to go up to the brain, ascending, and then when we send messages out, they're going to have to go down and out, so that would be descending for the motor. Okay? And then we need to label all this fun stuff on the spinal cord. Can I erase that? So really, there's just a couple things on here I really want you to know, like mainly sensory information coming into the posterior part and the motor going out the front, which would be the ventral. Sometimes they'll mix the terms up with posterior and dorsal go together, right? Because they both mean backside. And anterior and ventral both mean front side. So, all right. So number one, this gap in the back is called the posterior median sulcus. Okay. So a sulcus, you'll learn when we get to the brain part, when we study the brain, that sulci or a sulcus is like the grooves in the brain. So that's what the sulci are, is like grooves. Number two is going to be posterior gray commissure. Which makes sense right in here. Posterior, slightly posterior, it's gray matter. Kind of looks like, the gray matter kind of looks like an upside down butterfly, doesn't it? Doesn't it? No? Nobody agrees? Just me? Thank you. All right. Number three is somatic. Number four is sensory nuclei. Number five is visceral. Number six is motor nuclei. So looking at it up here, sensory, motor. Like I said, so the motor is going to be in the front, and the sensory is going to be in the back, posterior, dorsal, whatever. And then where they labeled the somatic part, which somatic is more of the voluntary or outside, if you remember that part, and five, visceral, is more like internal. So the visceral is in the middle, and then the somatic is towards the outside. Number seven is going to be the ventral root. So that's here. So the message coming out here, ventral root. 8 is going to be the anterior gray commissure. So just like the posterior, but this one's in front. Number 9 is anterior median fissure. So that's a bit of a larger gap there. And number 10 is going to be the posterior white column. Number 11 is going to be posterior gray horn. Number 12 is lateral white column. 13 is lateral gray horn. 14 is dorsal root. ganglia. 15 is anterior gray horn. 16 is anterior white commissure. Yep. And 17 anterior white column. So all right, so I would say the main things to know here, definitely what I marked here. Also where they pointed to this, so this is a dorsal root here, going that direction, okay? Dorsal root ganglia, know that one as well. That's 14. And these guys, I think that's pretty important to know that. Ventral root as well. I would mark that. Maybe the posterior gray horn, number 11, and the anterior gray horn, meaning the front and back part of the gray matter. All right, and that's it.